Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 415. We have a returning guest who I'm anxious to talk to. Many of you all know him. He's kind of always online doing stuff, and we're going to talk about that. But before that, we're going to do what we always do and go around our virtual room and just tell everyone what we've got going on and anything we'll want to promote. So for me, I've got a website, circworks.com, where I have a number of things up there, including my wax packs, which I'm going to be doing tomorrow on my YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing a live stream where I'm making some new wax packs, getting stuff ready for May the 4th and Free Comic Book Day, which is on the same day. And that leads me to let everyone know that on May the 4th, I will be at Surprise Comics in Surprise, Arizona. I'll be signing, and I'll be bringing, maybe doing some Star Wars sketches or whatever, because it's Star Wars Day as well. But I'll be there with my books and all that kind of stuff. So definitely stop by if you are in the area. Other than that, here on the YouTube channel, I have my new series. It's not really series, just basically the new content that I'm doing, where I reverse engineer classic nostalgia from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And the latest video that I've got out there is I basically recreate Underoos, but I make Underoos from the movie Alien. So it's kind of fun. You can check that out if you haven't. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. What about you, Corey?
I am. I'm still writing that book, and I released another chapter. I don't know, sometime
it's
this
great,
week.
By the way. And Corey says he doesn't like horror, but this is a very horrifying. It's very. You read it, and it's like this is a horrifying scenario, and it's great. I love the latest one. I really loved. So I mean, not that I've loved every one you've put out, but this
thanks.
one is really, really cool.
I'm glad you liked it. I tried not to get too graphic, so it's more most of the horrors
fills in all those scenarios.
Yeah,
it's crazy, and it's like what didn't Corey think of? You know.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting one. There's a lot of things that I thought of that I decided not to go into detail on. But if you want to see what I think it might be like if everyone in the entire world suddenly got reset to day one memory and instinct, then go read the most recent chapter, which is here. I'm still trying to figure this part out. Yep. Anyway, so go on my Substack, coreykerr.com/email, and it'll take you to my Substack.
Sweet.
All right, Josh.
I was I completed an order of our guest's book, so it should come on the 8th. Anyhow, so because that's a good price. So anyhow, you can check out my stuff at joshuakemble.com. You can also check me out at Joshua Kemble with a K on the social media, and you can also get my books, Jacob's Apartment and Two Stories, and they're both really cool indie comic. And if you want to be a cool kid, you want to be a hip kid, you need to get hip with the cool indie comics. So, you know, Drake, Kendrick Lamar beefs, put that aside. You know, I know you're hip to that, but get more hip and get a couple graphic novels. If it's not apparent, I'm pretty sleepy. So anyhow, yeah, that's my stuff.
All right. So, welcome back, Christopher. I definitely know you have.
Speaking of hip kids,
yeah, I definitely know you have something to promote. So, unless there's just something in addition you want to promote as well, the floor is kind of yours. So,
yeah, I'm going to jump in on that beef with Josh and go Anderson .Paak.
Nice.
To Kendrick Lamar. Okay. Twerking music references. We win. Hi.
I'll raise you one Anderson .Paak. Anyhow, sorry.
There you go. One backbeat. Yeah, my new book is out, and it's a big thing for me because it's the first time that I've gone online with one of my publications. It's strange enough, it's my 30th book.
Jeez.
30th? I'm going to say 30th to be safe. It might be 31st. But anyways, last book I put out was a year and a half ago. And then I just sort of pulled away from print publishing on my own, because the comic company we started in 2015, it had sort of run its course. We'd done 73 books, and with a regional market, you can only go so far. And I thought, I'm going to retool and figure out what I do next. And so when I came out with, started putting together this project, I knew it was going to be online. I knew it was going to be larger. I knew it was going to be a hardcover. And so it's the first thing that I've made available, and I've just sort of put aside everything else. So this is my fresh new appearance, my entry into the larger world. And Corey's got some of the older publications there. And I think that's number 11 he's holding for the one series. So the new book is it's on Amazon, and it'll stop a bullet.
Yeah, nice. I didn't know it was hardcover till before the show.
Oh, yeah, so it's kind of fun. It's there's a whole bunch of changes that you got to go through when you're doing it online, and it sort of takes away any of that safety net you might have had for winging it. And can we just shift this over? Well, there's nobody to talk to when you're doing it online. It's you got to figure all that math out yourself. So
right.
But I'm really pleased with it. I'm really excited to put it out. I think it's the best thing I've done. And I still am surprised. I'm still reeling with the fact that I got a review, a promo from Jim Shooter.
Oh, awesome.
On the back. So it's crazy, but it's going well.
Yeah, so let's for anyone who's not familiar or anyone who needs a refresher course, let's kind of give the rundown of what you actually do. You say you do this online, but you're doing something very unique and something that, at least me, I can't speak. I could probably speak for these guys too, but and pretty much everyone else is something we probably wouldn't ever want to try to tackle, and that is, not only are you doing a daily comic strip, but you're doing it live online and by request, taking requests from your audience.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of that you get the request like beforehand, but there's a few that you've done like live, right? Just as you're drawing. Yeah. So, it's just that kind of, it's just it's crazy. And it just really shows your prowess as a cartoonist that you're able to do that. And to be as well, obviously you're prolific. You're talking about, you've already put out 30 books, but doing this on the daily basis is just, it's inspiring. So,
oh, well, that's really nice to see those things. Yeah. The way I work is that anybody that suggests an idea, whether it's a sentence or just a rounded notion, like one I did recently was a guy gets superpowers. A guy gets water-based superpowers, but he only has the ability to desalinate water. So, there we go. And other times I'll get, 3 words.
Yeah.
Or just a random sentence like, a monster crashed my wedding. So I just take whatever it is, whatever the idea that's presented forward, and I try to structure some type of story from that, some type of narrative. And, and I switch up the mediums that I use, and I allow people to choose whatever. And, if you feel like you want to see ballpoint, we'll do ballpoint, whatever it is. And, it's just a way for me to engage with the larger world around me, rather than just being trapped in the studio all day long on my own,
Yeah.
But it also engages others for that process, and I get to walk through storytelling with other people that might be starting on that path.
Yeah. So how is it different now since the first book, where you're actually, because in the first book you did requests, but you weren't doing it like live online. And since then, growing a following and doing this daily and everything like that. I mean, how has that kind of changed, I guess, your work life and everything, and I assume, for the better and everything, but because it also, when you're putting out daily content like that, it's gotta kind of grow your audience and everything. So when you go to put a book like this out, a lot of people, and not only that, but what's kind of ingenious is, I mean, who isn't going to want a book with a comic that they had some say in, whether it's just giving you a prompt or something like that. So you've got people that follow you and watch your content, but like, oh, I'm the one that suggested that cartoon, I'm definitely going to pick up that book.
Yeah, I really hadn't taken stock of that until my wife pointed it out recently.
Yeah.
And my one niece has been having health problems for some time, and she suggested a page, and it's called Hot Sauce Cat Fight.
Okay.
And it's about cats jacked up on hot sauce getting into kung fu fights. So, we visited them on the weekend, and I brought the proof that I have of the book so that she could see, because I haven't got my copies yet. I'm waiting for them in the mail. And she was really happy to see that, and it really hadn't sort of taken stock in my head about there's some kind of marketing aspect to that. What I did try to do with the new book was I changed the format. The last book that I had that Corey was showing a few minutes ago, it's entirely in a portrait format, and it just showcases the pages, right? But what it doesn't refer to is where that comes from, the processing behind it. And in the new book, hopefully it's not going to flare right out. It is.
It is.
Yeah.
We'll pull up some of your strips, though.
In the new book, it shows the original art along the side. It shows the finished page. Underneath that is the suggestion for that page. And then what my thinking was in making it.
Yeah, I like that, because reading the first book, it just seems like just a lot of weird, strange, like non sequiturs and things like that. And especially when you're taking, you kind of, it helps to have that. And I guess, maybe there's a difference of opinion. I think it helps to kind of have a little description of what the prompts was, like you're doing now. I mean, I guess you could relate that to, like, Blade Runner. Some people like the director's cut, or some people like the cut without the narration. Some do. So I guess you could argue maybe it's better without. I think in your case, I think it makes more sense to have that in.
In Christopher's case, it makes more sense. In the case of Blade Runner, you're a lunatic if you don't
I
like
have
the
6
edited
copies
version.
of that. I have 6 copies of that film.
Worth it. Worth it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think that I like to think that putting down the structure of it on the page is beneficial, because then people can see causality, right? They can understand a little more into that process.
Yeah.
And
I think
within it.
It deepens the work a lot, because it's like you can still read it without reading those parts if you don't want to, but it's neat to have extra context to just show kind of the full gravity of the stuff you're doing, because it is such a unique process.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on a recent episode. We had Daniel from Steam Crow on, and we talked about how moving forward, with AI, pretty much everywhere, that the process is going to be, kind of what's going to separate us artists from the computer, overlords or whatever they're going to take over. But
I don't know, Scott. Live art stream, it's like type.
Yeah, but I think that's part of it. It's part of it that why I like. That's part of why I think it makes sense to talk a little bit on the page when in the printed form as well, because again, you're going through your process, and all those videos are cataloged on your YouTube channel. So any one of these, I don't know, it might even make sense to have. It would take a long time to do, but have a little like I don't know, maybe even like a what do you call a QR code that take each video on the page.
Oh,
That's
wow,
probably a
yeah.
lot. That's pretty
It might
involved.
be that might be
yeah.
a lot. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if somebody wanted to, they could go back by the title or whatever and find that particular, if they're interested, and kind of see that piece come together, which is pretty cool.
I do
That's
a
a
thing
really
with the
good
YouTube
point.
videos where I put the page up as the card for the video.
I love it.
Yeah.
So of the it's a page of the day before, but so you're not too far off from figuring out which day I did what page on. You know.
And I think that's a
Right.
cool part to this book too, because people can literally like Scott was saying, it's like, if you read a book, you can like scroll through the thumbnails, find the one, watch the video before that, and you'll watch it being made, which is really cool.
Yeah,
And it's a unique process. It's very would you call it like almost like improvisation, like the way you're kind of working? It's got elements of that, right?
I guess so. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had any experience with like improv.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
with that voice, how could he not? Christopher, John, and I always joke that you and Kevin Cross have the best voices of our YouTube
is that right?
circle.
There we go.
Yeah.
I should get into radio. Edie says my mic is too low. Is this?
It sounds pretty good.
Edie?
I wonder
it's fine.
I wonder if it's Edie's, because I mean, everything sounds about the same level to me.
My voice doesn't.
Well,
resonate well with some
Edie
people
preferred
because it's a little bassy.
Yeah. Edie preferred the version of Blade Runner without the voiceover, and so I totally disagree with her and ask respect for Gary Hodges too. I just want you guys to know that
you're in favor of with the voiceover, then, Joe.
Oh, I think it needed the voiceover. I think it was the best call.
I don't want to get too much into that, but I mean, I thought the consensus was a lot of people say it's better without, but I
I'm one of those
prefer it
weirdos who's like,
no, I prefer it with because it's got that film noir quality. But
there's nothing better than
my
name's Decker. I'm a Blade Runner. Yeah.
It's the best.
What are you gonna do without that?
Also, Scott, the reason you think that is because you're right and you have taste.
Well, and that's also the first version I saw.
Me too. I might be biased.
I think the reminiscence part is what affects most people on where they stand on voice or not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was just confused where it was Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
I knew I was watching the wrong one.
They're both good, I think.
I think so. Yeah. I think it's great.
But we're here to talk about Christopher, not
oh my
yes, not Blade Runner.
And we're not going to talk about being a replicant at all.
We've solved an age-old problem in the chat, so we can move back into the
which cheese is the best.
I decided to start a fight in the chats in honor of your kind of improvisational live streams, and so it's been good.
Ooh,
yeah,
like it.
Yeah, I'll start another one. I have never seen any version of Blade Runner. Is that?
Oh my!
I gotta go.
Scott, have you ever thought of a different co-host?
I'm in the wrong place.
But I do have. I'm making my way through the Philip K. Dick.
That's redeemable.
That's a great book.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How could you be a fan of Philip K. Dick and not have seen Blade Runner?
Yeah.
I'm coming. I'm making my way through. I'm making my way through pop culture.
All right,
Corey, how are you going to answer?
Android's dream of electric sheep. That's why.
Exactly. Yeah. How are you going to know if androids dream of electric sheep if you haven't read the book, man? Come on.
I'm getting there.
The thing about Philip K. Dick is he's a great author. He's absolutely lousy at titles.
Yeah, every single movie that's ever been made on his book, they've changed the title to. I don't think
because
maybe Minority Report is
Minority Report is or Total Recall,
and that's
a
weird title
cheap
too.
For wholesale.
Right? I like that more than Total Recall, actually.
Right? But Minority Report...
doesn't really... You're right. It doesn't really sell it as like a dystopian future type story.
It doesn't.
It just sounds like
Minority
a sales
Report came
book.
out, it's a flip book. It was written as a police procedural. So as a police officer is making his notes, is how Minority Report was written. And so it was meant to be read like a police notepad. I'm a nerd.
No,
Well,
but
we're
like,
all
okay,
nerds
this
here.
can tie back. So there's a book you were talking about that's fun, right? And also the format's a little different. Do you want to talk about what it was like to design the book to read horizontally rather than vertically?
Well, I try to get cagey about it, right? Because there's a whole bunch of requirements when you're doing books in a print-on-demand format,
Are you using
and then
KDP or are you using
I
KDP?
use KDP for this, and I
Okay.
got an absolutely brilliant price. You know,
Yeah.
I'm never going to complain about
The
what
the
cost
problem
of
with
it.
KDP is if you try to do anything interesting, there because there's no real person, it's just a robot,
Yeah.
and they'll say, "Oh no, this is wrong." So like if you try to publish a manga and have it in reverse like a manga is, it's going to tell you what's wrong. And it's like, "No, that's the way I want it to be." I want
Not if you mess around with your approach to it. I think you just got to
Okay.
figure it. Like maybe the backwards part, yeah, okay, but so there's a thing where the titling and
It
the
has to be
text
on the book, right?
has to be
Hmm.
in a portrait format, and it has to be upright.
Yeah. Yeah.
The spine needs to be able to be read as
Right.
any other book on the
Yeah.
shelf, and I couldn't print it like this without it having some extraneous cost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so one of these would probably be about $45-50
Yeah.
American. That's about 1,000 Canadian.
Yeah.
And so what I came up with was a cheeky little workaround, and that is I've got the text and the titling at the top, but
Uh-huh.
when somebody looks at it off the shelf, the first thing they'll do is do this.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It makes
Because I
sense.
put the art on it.
Rather than waiting till you get inside the book to do it, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the first thing you see is how each page is laid out for you to read. Well, the first thing you see is a blank page, but then inside that is this thing about the format. So when you open the book and you orient it this way again, right? As soon as you come to that first page, you do this once more, and now I got you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything follows suit. So I just try to be looking at it in the best way that I can get the material on the page that I needed to, and because of the text running underneath the page itself, it would leave this additional piece of space on the side.
Yeah.
And so, I started to play with the layout idea of which orientation to have it in, and then it just hit me. Why don't I put some of the original art on the side? Because I'll do something in pencil, scan it, put it into the computer, and do all the finishes, the coloring, the lettering, and all that digitally. So why don't I just show the pencils on that side?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
whatever media application, or pencil crayon, or
Here, I'll
mark.
pull up one so you can kind of see
Watercolor.
what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
there you go.
Yeah.
So, Christopher, we've had you on the show to kind of talk about this before, but do you want to talk about like that example was just pulled up? What kind of mixed media are you utilizing here in this book?
And
Because
we can talk about, we can pull
yeah.
up different pages and kind of get your thought process and how it came
Sure.
to be
Yeah,
too.
that's
So
when is the
And
last
maybe
time you-
when we pull them up, you can mention the prompts too. Just show people a little bit of what we're doing.
Okay, so the one that we just had,
here, I'll pull it back up.
yeah, the suggestion is an exaggerated lie that's called out immediately. And what better exaggerated lie do people have than fishtails?
Yeah.
When we were out at the fishing pond, and I caught a 20-pound fish, and people were like, a 20-pound fish? Well, I had to throw it back. You're only allowed to have so many,
Yeah.
And really, he didn't catch a 20-pound fish for the most likely, right? So, so I'm playing on that, but being a bit of a character, I'm trying to fit as many fish puns in that page as I possibly can.
You
So
missed
look-
it's official, or maybe you meant that, but you just didn't spell it out that way.
There you go. So tackle, bob, yeah, and official was deliberate, right? But that was just for Scott, and all the little jokes is just to sort of that's the fun part at the end. Like for me, I work a little counterintuitively to other people. Is that I tend to generate the story during the process of making the art
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
I have a firm assertion that if you're going to get something done, you got to just get started and put, whatever mark making tool to this, whatever surface you're working on and get going. And then everything else sort of assembles itself from there. And allow yourself to trust your intuition, allow yourself to play and see what develops. The two fellas that are in the foreground, that's pencil crayon. And the fish that are in the background is acrylic.
I love it.
But the fish, it's one silver fish and one golden fish on a white piece of paper. Or it's a cardstock. It's a heavy grade cardstock. And then the pencil crayon guys are on another piece of cardstock, the white background. So it's cutting out the surroundings of them, playing with, putting a little, stroked edge around the exterior of them, embossing them off the background, repetitively duplicating the fish. So now look I got a lot of fish that I didn't have to draw all of them, just playing with all the different capabilities, not only of the traditional sense, but how they work in that digital application as well, and how we can build up and build on, well, I guess build on what we've already established with just the basic art. So
I love it.
I tend to approach everything in that regard, and whatever media I'm using.
I love it. We're having a riot in the chats for you to answer this question. So should we?
Okay,
should we finally? So Jim started a riot. Thanks, Jim. He said, "Art question for the Runciman. When was the last time you utilized Wally Wood's 22 panels?"
Every day.
The answer is our day.
Do most people know what Wally Wood's 22 panels are?
I couldn't name all 22, but I know what it is.
But do you know what the principle of it is?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, so
you should run through for anybody in the watching who may not.
Larry Hamill was an assistant to Wally Wood, and so Wally used to get cantankerous. Wally Wood being one of the absolute brilliant old school comic creators from EC days, and Larry Hamill as his assistant had found out that when Wally would get really tired of talking head panels, where you've got a writer who's just has everybody nattering on and on and on, and there's not enough movement in a piece. So he figured out 22 different types of panels, camera angles or approaches, using silhouettes, using floating bodies in space, and how he can insert all of those into whatever the story was to give it a little more dynamic composition. And so, Larry had gathered up his notes. He put it in one place and copied it. And, there's a whole bunch of additional things that Wally would write.
There it is.
There you go. Thank you, Corey. Wally had beliefs like, that's Wally Wood talking, where some dumb writer has a bunch of lame characters sitting around and talking for page after page. So Wally Wood would also say things, why draw something when you can swipe it? Why, there's just a whole bunch of different little ideas that he had for expediting the working process. And it's just genius. But when you look at some of those compositional elements and you realize that in putting those into your pages, they really do change the structure of how you tell a story.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much ingrained in my head now at this point. I'm always trying to insert little different bits and bobs of that in different pieces. So.
Yeah, that's always on the wall next to, I think, most cartoonists' artboards or whatever. And it's mainly like for those moments when you're working on crazy amount of pages like you just put out, and maybe you're like working on one, you're like, this feels kind of stale, and then you peek over there, you're like, oh, yeah, like I need to hit that. It's a brilliant little piece. Yeah.
So I try copying that and giving it to whoever I can.
Mhm.
So
I love
I'm going to pull up another one. So in addition to, I mean, they're all by request, but you also have some running kind of, I don't know what you would call it, if you just a sort of series within the overall page a day
I've done
series.
a few.
But yeah, so we've got Sam the Private Eye.
One of those guys, actually,
Yeah.
two of those guys look real familiar.
Yeah.
So the Sam the Private Eye character, there were 3 Sam the Private Eye pages in the last book. And one was introducing your traditional gumshoe, and as he's narrating it like a Chandler novel. And he answers the phone, and the person on the phone says, "Hey, Sam, you stink." And he says, "Well, why would they say that to me?" And that's the end of that whole first one-page comic of Sam the Private Eye. And so each one of these things is a woman can't reach Sam. She's so worried. What are we going to do? Where's Sam at? And, a guy comes out of the shadows and says, "Ma'am, have you tried using a cell phone?" Which is, it's just silly things. So in this one, it incorporates Gary Hodges' 2 characters from DVSM, a fantastic book that everyone should read. And then there's Paul Pate talking about a strange person that he was working with that he's pretty sure isn't human. And hey, there's Jim. There's Jim. There's Jim Luan as the strange.
Troy's holding up something, but I think he's holding up Gary's book.
DVSM?
You can't see it.
Just ignore me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right. Okay.
So I drew this page with a quill pen, dipping it in ink and drawing a page that way. Nice. And then I colored it using acrylic inks. And, then I finished it off with the text and the paneling in Photoshop. So it's just because that's, for whatever reason, why I started doing the Sam the Private Eye pages is using dipping ink. And I really enjoy the crosshatch line. I really enjoy. I use a 01 to draw these with, so I can get lots of little lines.
Yeah. So now I'm curious how, like, when people have a request or whatever, is part of the I assume part of the fun has to be trying to stump you to see if they can stump you. So people throwing out just bizarre things, then obviously you deliver. But
I've never participated in that in Christopher's chats at all.
But here's one that I want to pull up because it's sometimes in trying to stump people, they'll throw out a bunch of different things. He's never going to make sense of all this. But then sometimes you get something like this. One panel, one image, one word.
Yep. Yeah, I think that is a fantastic suggestion. I really do. You would think it would be something that could really shut you down, because then, if it's penguin, well, what am I going to do? It's a penguin, right? Have them waving, like it doesn't. It's the one panel, one image, one word, and so what that made me think of in my head was one action.
Yep.
And as soon as I came up, well, it should have one action. And as soon as why not run?
Yeah.
And the idea is to try to do it in such a way as to make people wonder what's going on with this. To try to tell some story, because that's the whole point of this, is to try to make people create some story on their own if I haven't actually supplied it for them textually. These people are running. Why?
Yeah.
And your answer is not going to be the same as Josh's or Corey's or Scott. It's not. Everybody's going to have their own perspective on what this might be about. And that's
for instance, if they were all looking up in the sky, you think, oh, this could be aliens or whatever, but they're kind of looking forward, like for a place. To me, for we got to head to this certain place or something like that. But
That's
I
brilliant.
don't know. Do
That's
you have
great.
anything in mind, or do you yourself, and you don't reveal that, but do you have anything in mind, or do you just totally leave it up to the interpretation of the reader of where they're running, what they're running from?
I'd like to leave it up to people.
Yeah.
It's I like the idea that what your interpretation is not going to be the same as anybody else's, and yet every single one of them are valid.
I love the fact that it's got that like Robert Longo kind of vibe of like real
Cool.
like exaggerated like movement poses, which are always challenging but real fun to draw.
Yeah.
So I like that about it too, where it's got just like a similar thing to like a Robert Longo, where you look at it and you're like, huh, what's happening here? Everybody's gonna have a different read, which I like. That's really cool.
Cool. Thanks. I thought what you might pull up when you were talking about trying to stump me, because I've got some zingers. Well, one of the ones I usually cite came from Jim Lujan, and that was a horse riding a bicycle, playing a guitar.
Was that in the samples you sent? Because I think I've all this.
I don't know if it was in the samples, but it is in the book. Let me find out what it is specifically, because it's a zinger. I think I can jump to my overhead and show you that. It's a horse riding a bicycle, playing guitar on the edge of a fourth dimensional parallax.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing to try to zing a guy with. Give me a second here. I'm gonna switch my camera. Here we go. That's the wrong camera. There we go. So this is the page. And so the way that I structure it is, let me do the better. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, so the way I structure it is that I have these two, it's a little blurry, sorry about that.
It's okay.
These two surfer dudes are trying to outline their film and say, hey, sup, my name's Rod, this is my bro Bingo. And he goes, sup? We're here for like funding for our sci-fi movie? Yeah. Sick picture, right? This cool crazy horse, he's riding on his space bike just jamming. What's it called? A cello. So then a science guy says, the space crystals are unaligned. Heed the cosmic horse's warning. Our bros love that part. Righteous. And then I interject and say, okay, stop. The ideas that you come up with during your recreation time might be nonsense to others. Got to draw a horse riding a bicycle while playing a guitar, though.
I love it.
So, sorry for the blurry camera, folks, but
I love that. Great.
So I really appreciate the suggestions, and no matter what they are, I'm going to try to do something with it. And I don't know where the whole motion, these guys are trying to make a film part came from, because I initially started drawing a horse playing a guitar on a bicycle.
Right.
And then building other panels around that, because as soon as you start engaging in the first part of it, something will pop in your head.
So
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, do additional ideas come in through the chat as you're working, and do you change up as you go?
No, I'll do that, but I tend not to, so a lot of the times when people will start riffing during the chat is that here comes all these different suggestions about how you can extend this further and further. And generally what I'll take a couple of things and try to incorporate those into panels. But for the most part, I'm trying to keep it to a one-page thing. Yeah. And so in the course of that, you can't fit everything in. One of the things I advocate is anybody that sees an idea that's suggested, or any of the suggestions I've used for doing any of the pages, if you have something that you want to do from that, do it.
Yeah.
Like if it inspires you to go a different direction and, make this page about hot dogs. I don't know what it is, but go for it, and because it's not going to be, even if you do try to interpret in the exact same way that I might be trying to interpret, it's not going to be the same page. because everything that you bring to the game, whether it's your experience or your capabilities or the way your mind works, it's going to go through all those filters, and it's going to come out your own unique thing anyways. So, what happened?
You're there.
No,
Josh is. I don't know where Josh is, but you're fine.
Josh turned into a drawing.
Yeah. He may have fell asleep. He's had a long night, so
I think he got called away for a moment.
Yeah. All right, do we want to pull up another one? This is the one I used for the thumbnail, just because I love the color scheme with this one. But
okay, so this is so I took part in a stamp swap through Dee Dee Willingham's channel, and so what this was a bunch of people would create a stamp of their own and put it on 10 pieces of paper, I think it was, and put them in an envelope. I think it's something like that, 10 pieces of paper and 10 stamped items and mail it off, and then they're dispersed amongst everybody. And so that these different elements that you see in there, some of the textures in the background, the lady with the binoculars, the random fish, the spirals behind the submarines. The lemur is actually a sticker from a drawing that Dee Dee did.
it's a sticker. Oh, okay. It does
lemur.
look like it does look like Dee Dee's art, but I didn't realize it was a sticker.
But I put chest medals on him and a captain's hat.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then I had, what's the suggestion? 3 words: sushi, lemur, and submarine. And so, Dee Dee sent me a sticker of her lemur, so that's easy. So we'll incorporate that into the whole thing. But I make up this ridiculous story that sushi was invented by lemurs that are on the submarines. And of course I have to course correct it at the end with just somebody interjecting and say, wait a minute, that's not, do you even know what sushi is? Just because I've came up with this absolutely ridiculous story about the origin of sushi.
I love it.
But it incorporates all of these fun stickers that have been swapped amongst people. These stamped items that have been swapped, and it's I work mixed media a lot. Pretty much every page. Rarely do I ever stay to one tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's so many different elements in here and different types of paper. You can see seams running across the lemur's hat and the top of the lady's head, because that's masking tape underneath there.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
Just because I like putting tape down on things. I don't know why. I have problems.
Do you ever choose the medium first, or do you choose the medium based on the story, or is it like today's going to be a watercolor day, or is it like, I think this story would go with watercolor?
Okay, occasionally I'll decide, I kind of want to work in watercolor today. Occasionally I'll do that. But for the most part, it looks like this. I got some pencil crayons. I'll use these today.
We should clarify for people in the U.S. to a pencil crayon and colored pencil, just for anybody on stateside. Yeah.
I believe awesome. I say it in the King's English, which is...
No, you probably say it more correctly, for sure. We're the weirdos who took the U out of color, so, I mean,
Which
Cambridge did a study in the 90s of who speaks the most correct English, and it's actually the Central Coast of California.
Really?
Beauty, eh?
Refute it.
I would believe that from somebody who watched Blade Runner. Like, I would believe that if you watched Blade Runner, but I'm having trouble. The credibility's gone.
I will tell you,
argument is lost.
I heard that one time in the 90s before the internet was really ubiquitous, so I have no idea if there's a real source on that. I also lived on the Central Coast, so
probably a Californian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, do we want to pull? Let's pull up another one here.
Sure.
Yeah, let's go through them.
Bad Luck Bill.
Bad Luck Bill. So this is.
I love the way you draw the cowboy.
And again, totally different style.
Yeah.
Now, is this digital or is this?
So the pencils are and the inks are traditional,
Okay.
and then it goes through the grist mill of the computer. But um, this is an actual one where people are suggesting, like, throwing more ideas at me live
Right.
as we go. And so it starts with a cowboy who's got no luck at all. Okay, first panel, let's go. Ah, gum busted. So and then a talking horse. Okay. So here we go with the talking horse that won't let him ride on top. So then you see the next panel starts coming together. And then he wins in a game of cards. He wins I think it's a prognosticating pig. And but his powers are fueled by whiskey and 4-leaf clovers.
And he's got a tutu, the pig.
Well, and the tutu, and then the tutu was a last minute thing actually, but so I had to incorporate the tutu in there. So all of these crazy elements coming together on the fly, just he's getting swindled by the whole deal. Is the direction I went with the story.
Nice.
But the eye patch, come on, like that's just give the pig an eye patch. Like I
love, Chris, that you actually chase those things. Like I think there were a couple streams where I'd throw like a little curveball as a joke, and then the next thing you know, you're actually making it a real thing. And I love that you do that and almost take it as like a, I don't know, like out of curiosity, why do you do that? Like why, like if someone throws like a wild curveball where they'll be like, draw a coliseum full of a bunch of people and half of them are horses, and you're like, yeah, let's do that. Like
yep.
Why do you choose to do that? I love the result, but I'm just kind of curious, like what does it, I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious why.
So every month I run a comic jam. Monday night I'll be running a comic jam in a gallery downtown here in London. I've been doing it since 2015. And so the idea of it is somebody draws the first panel and puts the text on the first panel if there is text. And flips it over, signs their name on the back, and slides it in the middle of the table. And the next person comes along and has to continue what they started. For one panel, flip it over, sign the name on the back, slide it in the middle of the table. And so the joyful benefit of that is that it takes you out of your comfort zone and forces you to grow creatively. And the idea is to try to develop story. And the beautiful thing about engagement with others is that you're not going to stick to a pat, this is the way story goes.
Yeah.
You're just not, because you can't. You don't have that affordance because of the variability of it. And that's why I enjoy that. That's why when somebody says, Coliseum half full of horses, first I gotta, consider that maybe they need a hug. And secondly, I gotta draw a Coliseum full of horses.
Jeez.
I love that.
So but there's workarounds, right? Like here I draw a Coliseum, but the predominant image of the page is these stampeding horses.
Yeah.
And so, but the context and the narrative is that because of the wonderful fusion between visual and textual elements in sequential art, is that I can incorporate the text to fill in the missing gaps in the art, and I can say the Colosseum, all the horses that fill this Colosseum are going crazy. So now I can draw the stampeding horses and the Colosseum, by not having to try to figure out how to, with some sort of sense of dimension, draw all of these horses in.
Right. So if I was to say to you, I want you to draw like a spinning mobile of bicycles. How would you get around that?
I'd probably draw a spinning mobile.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
To me,
I mean,
bicycles,
the bicycle one's
bicycles are the
been
hardest
thrown
thing
at
to draw,
Christopher.
and then to have each one of those bicycles coming from a different perspective.
Once you figure out how to draw bikes, they don't feel, it's a repetition. It's anything.
Yeah.
Once you draw something enough, then you sort of get an angle on it. And bikes is something I purposely went out of my way to learn how to draw one.
Yeah.
But what I'd probably do with that is I draw a Calder-esque mobile above a children's crib, like a baby's crib. And it's nothing but bicycles on it. And then, I'd probably play with some kind of idea about, the parents are clearly Tour de France and enthusiasts.
See, there you go.
They're really like bike enthusiasts.
For anyone who for anyone who hasn't seen Christopher's live streams, there you go. I mean, that's pretty much he's
it's a sampling.
It takes seconds before something pops in his head and he's ready to go.
You got to allow yourself to be open to that intuition.
Yeah.
That like there's pre-planning. And that's the deceptive part, right?
Yeah.
We all have a pre-plan on any given moment in a day, whether it's the way that we work and we understand, the tools that are in our toolbox, right?
Yeah.
But then there's the approach that we take to executing that work. That's the flair. That's the part that makes it your own. That's the autonomy. That's the thing that AI is never going to replicate, by the way. That's the thing that is going to separate you from the others, is your allowance to follow that creativity and that intuitiveness. Like Corey did a drawing. I'm going to pick on you for a second, Corey. Corey did a drawing, and he had a Shiva-like image with all the hands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And all the different implements in that. Now, other people are going to look at that and go, how in the world did he do that? And how much time did it take to plan all of that out? And what did he look at while he was doing it? And all kinds of different questions are going to pop up in people's heads because they don't, they don't have an inkling on his process. But thank you, Corey. Thank you. It's a beautiful piece. But to watch Corey do that, and to see how he goes and executes the different parts of that, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But those characteristics that are within that piece, like the way he uses line, that's the part that just makes it his own flair that he gets to put into it. More so than the composition, more so than all the other aspects of it. It's that polish that makes it his, right?
So Christopher, so you were mentioning that drawing kind of meetup you guys do, and I remember as a young cartoonist, I was probably still in my 20s, early 30s, going to a couple cartoonist meetups where they did that, and when it would get to me, being just paralyzed, where I would just be too precious with it, or I would sit there and just stress about it because it's like, crap, there's a bunch of cartoons here I really admire, and what if I suck, that kind of thing. And I used to have that also with life drawing, where I would tense up and I'd be worried about perfection, or I'd start and I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna render this eye. And as I've drawn more and more, I've gotten more comfortable with I like being in a room and just being can I draw every single person in this room in 10 minutes? Can I capture every single person in 10 minutes? It's fun. And that's actually free time, to me. That's the funnest thing in the world. So I feel there's a switch that kind of happens the more kind of comfortable and seasoned you get, I think, as an artist. Not saying I'm even remotely as comfortable as I should be, where you can deal with what you were talking about, which I think is interesting for AI, where audit systems work great until you throw a stick in the spoke, right, of the wheel, and then it doesn't know what to do. It's I don't know what to do. Whereas a human, you can be let's put tape over that, see what happens, or let's change that, add a tutu. And you can kind of end up with those unpredictable results that come with just the adaptability of being a human. And I think I don't know why what you were saying reminds me of that, and I'm wondering if you found that, have you grown more comfortable as you've gotten more seasoned, like this is your 30th book?
I
Has
think
that
there's
made
two
you more
fac-
comfortable to
Sorry.
be like real adaptable with your art, or is it just something you've always had? Because for me,
I,
it
I,
was something that took a long time to develop.
I think two factors play. One is this: when you look at a blank page, a lot of people look at a blank page and go, "Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?" And you start making a couple marks. Go, you flip it over, or you get another piece of paper, and there's no one that hasn't done that. Everybody's done that at some point in their life. I grew up very low income in our family, and so when my mom could afford a little pad of typewriter we called it back then,
Yep.
and now it'd be printer paper, right? But when she would buy that,
Modernize. It's fax paper now. What are you talking
fax
about?
paper, yeah. Wait till it changes when it notified on my beeper. The that and a pen and or a pencil, and that's
Yeah.
what I got. And so there was always this concern about making a mess of whatever I was doing. And then one day, I dropped my pencil and it made a scribble mark on the paper, just across the paper. And well, that's what I've got. So the answer, did I disappear?
No, you're
No,
here.
you're good.
Okay, I disappeared in my own thing. So the answer for me was, well, I got this piece of paper. Here we go, with the scribble on it. I scribbled the whole page and said, okay, let's draw on top of that. And there's this sort of a epiphany moment that if I remove the preciousness of the surface,
Mm-hmm.
with modification, then I got nothing to worry about the mistakes because it's starting inherently from a mistake.
Yep.
And so that's why I'll stick Post-its down. I will stick whatever other modifications. I'll stamp things on there. I'll put masking tape. None of that matters. It's modification for the surface to take away the preciousness of it, so I can just start going.
It's kind of like the advice I give for like sketchbooks is that, when you get a nice new sketchbook, just run over it with a car or something, or just
I love it.
just do something to the first page just to get it started, so it's not that precious bright white, and you can get started. So
Yeah.
Well,
or
actually,
in mine, I just wrote a note to myself, and I don't do sketchbooks nearly as much as I should, but just wrote a note saying this is not precious. Don't anything in here is just experimental, and just kind of so that kind of an affirmation as you're getting into it. But yeah, it's the same principle.
I'm going to show you something crazy while I'm talking about the second thing. This is my sketchbook.
Yeah, that's great.
Making
wow,
notes.
That's great. I love it.
You need to make a book.
Yeah, you need to make a book of that.
So this is what is going on inside mine.
That's great. Man, that is cool.
And
there's
again,
a couple things I'm noticing. Like one of the things that helped me loosen up, especially like life drawing and stuff and sketchbook drawing, is to draw in pen rather than pencil. Because I found that I was like really precious with pencil, and I have a similar background, grew up poor, all that, and so for me, like something about the pencil, I'd just be all precious. And the neat thing about a pen when you get to it is like, well, I drew a wrong line. Now I got to draw over that wrong line with the right line and not care that there's the wrong line there. And it frees you up to actually draw more accurately. It's weird, but I noticed that in your sketchbook you use a lot of ink, which is which is cool.
Yeah, well, it saves you time on. Well, it's there. Work with it or move on.
I love it.
Like the doodle I've got going on my desk right now is I'm drawing with a fountain pen.
I love that.
It's and so this is today's page, and it's just drawing, no pencils first, just go. And if I make mistakes, move on. And so that's the second thing that happened, is that trust your intuition. And when we have, and it comes from emotional and I think creative maturity. There's a certain, and I'm sure, Corey could speak to this with his students. When you get to a specific point where you can let go of all of the wants and woulda, coulda, shouldas, and just go into the work.
Yeah.
You'll find that you'll be more successful at completing the work. I don't know.
Well, and one of the most, just to go along with what you're saying, one of the most damaging things I think students think is they freak themselves out about wasting things. Like
Yes.
at the very beginning, I will watch students do like one of two things. One is they hyper fixate on over planning. Like I think pre-production is really important, but they hyper fixate on over planning to avoid making any mistakes so that they don't waste anything.
Yeah.
And so they try to plan for every possible contingency. They try to plan to the nth degree. The other thing that they do is they will get in and they'll like take too much time slowly working through the process instead of just get in there and mess around, like,
Yeah.
well, what if it doesn't end up in the final product? It's like, it'll get you farther down the road. Like go execute a bunch of stuff so that you know what you're doing before you even can, they always, because I'm on the communication side, which is a little bit more of the like business applied art. And they always start with what they think a style guide is. And I'm like, you don't know what the style is, right? And so they have a page. It's got 5 squares. Each one has a solid color with a hexadecimal value next to it. They've picked 2 fonts that they can pair together, and they made a logo. And they're like, look, a style guide. I mean, that means nothing. Like, you have made nothing. You have spent hours and hours doing nothing. That's such a dumb thing. Go make a bunch of stuff and then get a feel for what fits and what doesn't fit, and then describe what fits. That's a style guide. So yeah, I totally agree. Like just
40 bad drawings.
Yeah, a style guide is after the fact. You're describing what worked.
Yeah. A style guide is the thing that all designers and artists hate doing, and it's usually done by grunts after real guys make the other stuff.
It's like the historian after the fact. Hey, bold line design is here. Yeah. It's you go, okay, we made a bunch of stuff, some of it worked, some of it didn't. We're throwing out the stuff that didn't. Now you get to sit down, intern, and describe what worked on this page. Go ahead.
I love it. I think one of the best things I've heard is I took a life painting class that kind of opened my brain for life drawing. Prior to that, I never understood instructors would be like, we're doing gesture drawings and stuff like that. I always be like, let's just get to the real stuff. This stuff's boring. And then I remember this painting teacher. Everybody, by the way, in this class hated him for like the first half of the semester. You're sitting in class and you're being real professional and like, it's oil paint. So you're like, everybody's getting all blendy, which by the way, you shouldn't do with oil paint, but everybody's like using their fan brushes, and he would go behind you and just be like, be bold. And like sometimes he'd even just take like a brush and just swipe it across your canvas. Like you're being fresh work. And it's like, but what's funny is by the end of the semester, everybody was quoting him on be bold, because you caught yourself being loose, you started saying it to yourself because you're expecting him. Like, you're like, oh, I'm being like, my arm's too like tight here. And it's so valuable to be bold because like, and this is what I love about your work, Christopher. I feel like it's a perfect example of this. Art is the process of facing fear and overcoming it. Like, and so many people are prevented from being good artists by fear. And the whole act story thing is overcoming fear. So like, I love everything that you do is like kind of fearless when it comes to watching your stream. And I love that. I think it's a great example of how it's done, and it's a good reminder because every once in a while I'll find myself getting locked up and then I'll watch a Christopher Runciman stream and I'm like, what was I stressing about? I can do this,
There was American Abstraction School in Long Island, New York, started by Hans Hofmann, a German expat who had spent time with Picasso and a whole bunch of the old school guys there. Came over to North America to teach, Rauschenberg, Johns, a whole bunch of different guys. And one of his first year students, by the way, are Robert De Niro's parents. They were 2 of his first year students, and Robert De Niro's real name is Robert De Niro Jr. And so when they asked him to be the godfather, and Hans Hofmann said, "How much will this cost me?" So, anyways, that's an aside, because tangent time. Hans Hofmann used to grab the tubes of paint, the oil tubes of paint, when students are putting together their palettes as they're working in the classroom, and he'd squeeze paint onto the palette. He's, "Charge your palette, right? Don't be afraid." And he'd jam the brush in there right on the surface. And you could just see the absolute horror show that would, be revealed all over the face of these students. And, if they get upset or offended, and Corey, I don't know how many times you guys have experienced this, but everybody that's ever sat there in front of a bunch of people and teaching them on any level of drawing, this happens. They get so offended that you've violated their work of art that they're creating. And
yes,
Hoffman
precious
said,
piece.
"You're a student. I'm the teacher. You're here to learn." He didn't care.
Yeah.
All over the thing. You don't like it? Hit the brakes. And I mean, that's what we need to do, though. If that lesson penetrates the minds of those students of his, so that they abandon the idea of the preconception, they abandon the idea of the preciousness of the objects, and they just look for actualizing the thing they're trying to do.
Yeah.
They'll be so much more relieved, and they'll feel so much less pressure. You just make, and the thing about the suggestions coming in and the arbitrary choice of what am I going to use. And I keep containers like this, they're just kicking around all over my studio. I've got them at this desk. I got it at that desk, and wherever I'm working, because the randomness of that just allows me to not be locked up that I've only got this to use right now.
Yeah.
I got this to use right now. So that's noisy. That's the sort of mindset I try to approach it with. And then when it comes to developing the story on a page, like I said, once the visual element starts at the very beginning is where I'll make these subconscious choices, or I'll start to intuit some ideas about which way I'm going to go. What kind of narrative is this going to be? Is it going to be a conversational? Is it going to be, somebody looking at revealing a story in past tense, or suggesting something that's happening someplace else? Are we, is it the people just screaming and reacting to the visual elements that are happening? Like that, again, that's the second part of the fun, is putting that together. And then when I actually sit down and I put the dialogue on the page, it's not always going to be whatever I was thinking of, because in the meantime, Scott said a funny joke about burping, and I got to put that in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes an awful lot of sense. So Bold Line Design said something earlier that they find it easier to accomplish. Okay, the ability to mess around and be free to make mistakes is always easier for me to accomplish with analog media rather than just going ahead in digital. Do a piece in digital on one layer. And just
that's actually a good point.
Just
when I work digitally, one thing that helps is to also just like limit the amount of zoom in you can do, because there's always that eternal zoom problem that you're never going to have with the physical media. Yeah.
No zooming. Work digitally like you're working traditionally on a piece, and that might shake it. That might. Now, I don't want to break the mold on a person and say, no, you're. And I'm definitely not saying that's wrong. I'm just trying to think of how can you get that energy with your traditional application, or analog application, as the younger people say. How do you get that into your digital work and limit yourself? I don't know if that makes any sense. Corey, does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of. I think a lot of it is how we map our expectations to things.
Yeah.
So we bring all of our past experiences and assumptions to everything, and so like there's not a lot of reason nowadays technologically to use like blue line photo blue pencil, right? But like a lot of us have been trained to use photo blue pencil as a less committal way of kind of starting out. And it works because our brain sees that as a specific way. And so when I teach my students, I have them, even if they have a Cintiq or a Wacom or an Intuos or a Surface Pro or an iPad or whatever, I say, no, we're just gonna sketch on paper. All right. It feels to most people a little bit more less committal. Anyway, so yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thing. I also think, and this is a bit of a stretch, but I don't know. I think it works. Maybe it's the power of suggestion because I tell everybody that it works. But there's a certain amount of connection to nature and measurement as you have the tactile response of dragging your hand across, pulped up trees, and that you don't get on glass or plastic. My proportions are significantly better when I'm working on paper than when I'm working in glass.
Interesting.
I feel that too, weirdly.
Yeah, I think I just have a better literal feel for how long that line is compared to the last one that I did because I'm getting all the little fibers of the paper and everything. Anyway, there's a lot of that type of stuff. But
have you ever tried one of those overlays for your screen that replicates the fiber?
I hate them. I've tried it, but I don't like. I don't. It adds a little bit of parallax. There's a touch of
milky.
Yeah, it dims your colors, and I want to see what is there rather than So
I also feel like there's something, and this is coming from somebody who like the last 100 pages of comics I've done are all digital, so it's like take this with a grain of salt. But I will say there is something about like when I was working on like quarterly stories or Jacob's Apartment or one of the things I did traditionally. It's like there's something about a late night, working on a page, inking, and then you finish and you look in the mirror and there's like ink splotches on your face because you like rubbed your face. You got war wounds. And I know people say that it's a benefit of digital is like that you don't have to do cleanup or setup. There's something very true about that. Like where it's like I went to war with this page and I came back with some wounds. And it reminded me of when I used to do photo like long ago when I first took a photo class. It was like back when I was in high school. But it's like you'd go in the booth, you'd get that smell of developer fluid. Like it was horrible, but there was something very primal and artistic about it. And it gets lost in Photoshop and digital. And I think there's something there too with what Corey's saying, where there's some kind of connection to the physical media, I don't know that I feel, and maybe it's superstitious or something, but definitely I vibe with Corey on that.
The surface that I work on is 18 by. Scott, what size is the canvas? So I bought a canvas drawing. Whatever Scott bought, and he said you should get this.
I only know inches. I only know inches because I'm an American.
Yeah.
I mean,
18 by 22, or what is it? What's the size?
It's 11 by 17 inches is typical comic book page. Is that what you're? I mean, so the size that you work at. Is that what you mean?
No. So this the Huon that you've got, the Huon canvas.
Oh, okay.
Is what? 18 by.
I don't know what size my Huon is. I only use that when I'm doing mobile. The let's see, I've got a ruler. I can tell you my Cintiq. It's 20.
I feel like when you're saying Huon, you have to go Huon because it sounds.
Isn't it Huion? Like Huion? That's how. Yeah.
Huion,
okay.
yeah.
I think it's a Huion.
What is our monitor? Like a 22, 24?
Yeah, I think it's
24 inch. I think
18 by 22 or 18 by 24.
Yeah.
And like I don't draw on a tablet. And I don't draw on anything smaller. I draw on this big beast. And I don't zoom in, zoom out. I don't I get rough and dirty when I'm drawing, and I'll use different pencil tools where I've got like Dayglow dots or whatever, and just stick those into the composition and have to erase out what I don't want in there.
Yeah.
Like it's just sort of a strange put in, take away approach when I'm working that way, to try to emulate that traditional feeling of the haphazardness of it, the potential danger and loss of it. Is anybody familiar with Baron's Story?
No.
Okay, so Baron's Story on Life magazine, he's the guy that did the portrait of Howard Hughes, where they discovered him with the long fingernails and the crazy hair.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I've heard of that, but I don't know if I've actually seen that picture.
He's taught at the Pratt Institute, the California Institute of Art, a couple different great schools. But what Story put forward is the putting down and taking away. Now, his approach to it is really rooted in the old school traditional application. So we're using... Are you looking
the cover of Lord of the Flies that we all grew up reading. Okay, sorry. That's cool. I just looked
there you go. Right? So he'd do a drawing, okay, and he'd do a red wash over it, okay, and then he'd resist out certain areas. He would just put resist on certain places and do a white wash over top of that and remove the resist. Or he'd do a fix to keep the red down, and he'd put a white wash over top and scrape away some of the white so that the red pops through and leaves this little weird texture of scraping it away. He would do these multiple layer applications to pieces where he would work positive and negative. He'd put down and he'd take away, put down and take away. And he would build pieces up that way. Can you, Josh, can you pull up some of his more contemporary stuff, the more abstract?
Yeah, let me look for it.
Okay. So I came across a book called Watch Annual, published by Vanguard.
Wow, this is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a crazy artist, but Vanguard Publishing did a Watch Annual where they actually replicated the 16 pages of his university notes for his students on application. Symmetry, asymmetry in work, weights and chromatic balance, all kinds of different approaches. And that sort of really opened me up to make a mess of your own work.
Yeah, I dig that.
Yeah.
So there's an example of deconstruction as he's working. So there's so much takeaway that we can get from a haphazard approach that people take to their work.
Yeah.
Bill Sienkiewicz is another guy, Sienkiewicz, or however you
Sienkiewicz.
But Sienkiewicz is a guy who will draw there's an American Society of Illustrators video of him where he's doing a pickup truck. He draws it in ink. He lets that dry. Then he throws another acrylic ink wash over top of that, really wet, scrumbles some of it away, uses a hair dryer, puts that down. Yeah. Works wet into wet on the next layer above that. He pulls out Q-tips, and drags the ink in place. The process is so destructive, and in the fact that nothing it can be inviolate. He attacks everything, but because he's allowed himself to just follow the play, he gets all kinds of results out of those.
Dude, I love that so much. You know what's funny? I hope I'm not leading us on tangents, but just everything you say is so inspiring and just brings to mind like a million things to me. One of the things I was thinking about where you were talking about destructive, almost like freeing an artist. And then I was thinking back to when Scott was talking about just driving a pickup truck over your sketchbook. So you have some marks and it's not a white page. Great. I was just thinking about this there's this whole thing in the guitar community, right? Where people are paying, and I know you play music as well, Christopher, but it's like, there's this whole thing where people will pay like ridiculous amounts of money for a pre-relict guitar. It's the new kind of thing. It's like, torn up blue jeans. And a lot of people think it's absolutely insane that like, a huge rock star would pay, ridiculous amounts of money for a guitar that seemed old and beat up. But then when you talk to professional guitarists, a lot of them like it because when they pick it up, even though it's a very expensive guitar, it feels worn in. So they aren't precious when they play. And I was realizing that is real similar music too, where it's like if you get too precious, you get locked up and you can't play. Or you can't play as fluidly or as well. So sometimes you need that beat up old guitar to, or like a weird old, or change it up to like get a little more fluid or try something different.
Yeah, you're looking for the truth of that tool as art, less as artifact and more as tool. And there's a resonation or a sound in that. It's the same with I think it's the same with art tools. And forgive me if this is a differing opinion with folks, but
I love your philosophy on art tools.
What's that?
I love your philosophy on art tools. So please go continue because I love this. People need to hear it.
Okay. Some people are of the firm assertion that the fancier the art materials you have and the more expensive the ones that you have are going to somehow yield better results. And no. It's,
yeah.
I'm a firm proponent of grab whatever you come across and make something with it. It's the John Lennon, I don't know much about the world, but you give me a tool, I'll try to get something out of it. Like it's dollar stores work, Walmart's work, whatever. Now, okay, in a larger sense, the historic sense, the archival sense of things, if you're going to produce work that is going to have some sort of meritoriousness to it to have to survive history, then there's things you're going to need to do to those pieces to make them archival, like fixatives and sealing and whatever else it is. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about getting a piece done and use whatever you can and explore it and make a mess and figure out how far you can push something, because there's so much that can be done.
Yeah.
Exploring all of the parts of a ballpoint pen, not just the regular end of the tip of the ballpoint pen, but what happens if you work on this side and the light gray shading that you can get out of your black pen, and there's that extra dollop of ink that gathers on top that you can take that off and use that to smear and get some really rough texture. I don't know. How about you?
I love that. I feel like there's some scenarios where it's kind of like my opinion on it is there are some tools that do make your job easier. Yeah. So like you're gonna, if you're trying to get like the cleanest like black hole Charles Burns style like leathering, a Series 7 is gonna make that job easier. Like it just will.
An old Series 7 because the new ones are garbage.
Yeah, I don't know about that anymore. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it used to be Higgins Black Magic, and I don't even know if it's that anymore.
They changed the recipe on that.
Yep.
I know.
But then again, you got things today like the Tombow. All the different Tombow products are kicking butt. I mean, those Fidelis pens are the best inking pen I think on the market.
That's what I'm getting at. Is like I think that there are cases where like a more expensive thing, like there's times where you're doing an oil painting and there's saturation you're just not going to get from cheap oil paint. But there's something about like being in a, like, maybe it's when I was a kid, and like Christopher, I think we have similar backgrounds where it's like when I was a kid, my dad would bring home like printout paper from his work, the ones with the little punched holes. And it was the coolest thing to me because you could turn it around where it didn't have the dot matrix prints on it and the green banding, and you could have these long scrolls of paper to just draw on. And again, like there's something about just like having like a highlighter and crappy office supplies and you have 5 minutes at work to make something cool, that kind of creativity, that I think you're right, Christopher. I think I don't think you need crazy expensive supplies. I think, in fact, sometimes this can limit you. And I don't know.
Limitation makes you push yourself. These are quick scribbles. Okay, these
so good.
5-minute pieces about these to capture the inherent essence of these characters. Guy in the corner, magnetism, lightning, telepathy, super guy, giant guy. How do I capture the essence of all that? And I've got this.
I love that.
So, the way that I'll approach that is that I'll rough the composition in with this. I'll tighten up my lines with the red, and I will put value to it with the orange. And that's it. That's all I'm allowing myself to play with these.
I love it.
So the limitation can produce for us results that we might not allow ourselves to engage with. Corey, I'm not trying to just keep singling you out, but the black and white compositions that you were doing,
mm-hmm.
through that limitation, it forces you to find the variation that you want from one execution to the next, from one piece to the next. And I'm sorry if that's a step beyond, hey, let's just talk comics. But it's the same with Josh establishing himself that this entire book that you're working on is in this format.
Yeah.
Scott is now issue 6 of The Young and the Dead, working on the big finale.
Mm-hmm.
That's 5 issues. He's got to have the consistency of 6 issues.
Yeah.
For that to be collected and have a cohesive sense. So setting these limitations for himself. Thanks for showing those. Those are great works.
They are great.
The cohesiveness of the work, it doesn't mean you can't play, and you can't allow variation. So like the pages in the new book and the diversity of media that I'm trying to use in those pages, is just playing with anything I can find.
I love that though. It's so freeing,
You know what jelly plating is?
Jello plating?
Jelly plating.
I watched you do this. This is a fascinating technique.
It is a really cool process.
It's like a sheet of gelatin. Okay, you lay it down. You put a thin veneer of acrylic on it. You take a high contrast magazine page, glossier the better. You lay it on top. You give it a little rub down. You peel it off, and it should leave that high contrast part of the image down on that surface, on that jelly plate, in the acrylic, and the rest of the acrylic's on the surface of the magazine. Okay, so then you can immediately take let that set for a minute, let that dry. Grab another piece of paper and have it on standby. Do another coat of some color, some value. So this works as the subsurface value under the image that you put down, okay? And you lay that down, you lay a piece of paper on it, give it a couple minutes to adhere. When you peel it off, you have now got that transferred image onto your paper.
Yeah, it's so cool.
When you do it correctly, it looks like something. When you don't, it's a great working surface to do a one-page story on.
I love that. I do feel like the neat thing about jelly plating too is it's almost got the look of screen printing, but it's just way less clean and accurate. Like even really clean jelly plating still has that just bizarre texture or like irregularities come out in it, and I love that about it and the way you incorporate that. I don't know if Scott can pull up that page with the you had like this kind of abstract jelly plated fish in like the top middle panel.
Was that it?
No, it was another one. It's the one with the submarine and the horse. that we were looking at.
Oh no,
Or maybe
that one Christopher pulled up.
okay.
Let me see if I can
crazy?
find one in the ones that I've sent.
Anyhow, there was this really abstract ocean you did with a background that was jelly plated, and it was interesting.
I don't know if I have any samples of the jelly plated here.
Maybe I'm crazy there.
Oh,
I know we pulled it up at one point. It's beautiful work. It makes really cool textures. There it is.
It's an interesting.
What I was talking about. Yeah,
the lemur one. Okay, you would have said the lemur one.
The lemur. So that fish. Like, if I just look at the abstraction of that, I mean, that's just beautiful. You know, like that third panel is it's just I don't know. There's just beauty in that.
So the fish is a stamp.
I love that.
Everything around the fish is watercolor, tape, ink, jelly roll, white pen. It's everything. It's just throwing whatever's in the toolbox at the surface.
Are you photographing these or scanning these when you're going
I've got a scanner, and so once when I'm doing the pieces, I'll scan them and dump them into Photoshop and just keep going.
Yeah,
I find that works a lot better than to photograph them.
So when you're talking about constraints on things, do you agree with this theory? I'm gonna put something out there. I'm kind of curious on what you guys think, but I think that creativity without a problem to solve, it doesn't know what to do. Like creativity in general, I think is a problem solving modality of thinking, right? And so those constraints will often give you the variables in that equation to kind of work with and play with. And without those, it's almost like fire. Like creativity and fire are very similar in my mind. Like when I put fire in a stove or an oven or under a pan or to heat my water in my furnace, when it's contained and directed at something, it becomes an extremely useful thing. If I just let it run rampant in my house, I don't have anything left. It just kind of destroys everything. What do you kind of think about that kind of the interplay of like constraints and creativity along those lines?
Aside from the terror of the fire example,
that might be my next chapter in my book.
I think, well, if it's as good as that last piece that you put in there, I think it would keep me up for days. I think that when you see, and this is again horrible, in its assessment to some people, but when you see somebody that's doing a repetitive routine thing, and often you'll see with kids as they're growing up and they're developing some understandings and underlying principles about how they go about drawing, or they go about replicating the things that they see and they enjoy. They'll repetitively draw Pokemon or whatever the thing is that they're drawing.
Yeah.
It's boring from the outside. From the inside, they're exploring and creating and experimenting. But we know for a fact that the staticness of it, the blandness of it, is because there isn't problem solving going on, really. They're just replicating this thing over and over again until they feel they've got it to some sufficient degree. I think art is problem solving inherently. It's where it always is. Putting constraints on it just makes you have to think more.
Yeah.
It's just, you have to have a clear process to come out with that outcome because of the limitation. But whether you have whatever degree of limitation you have, you should be problem solving. And that's what'll make it yours. Those solutions you come up with are not the person beside you. Ideally, when you put that forward to your students, Corey, you'd be getting however many kids you got is however many solutions you got.
Right.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Ideally, because I think because we're all consuming the same zeitgeist, right? With
Yeah.
this worldwide media environment that we're in, it's not as fragmented as it was 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago. And so the first idea that everybody comes up with as a solution to a problem, and unless you have intentionally trained yourself to do otherwise, is usually the same super cliche thing that most other people are going to come up with, because you're drawing from the same surface level material to do that. And there's only so many solutions that are going to come out of that well. Yeah, exactly. And so I think truly creative people, help me out, Josh. I'm blanking because it's late. The Python who studies creativity, John Cleese.
Please.
Yeah. So Cleese talks about the idea that truly creative people are merely the ones who are willing to wrestle with the problem longer and put off the solution as long as possible. And avoid
That's the function of a good
temptation.
writer's room. Right? A good writer's room of comedians is gonna get all the obvious jokes out of the way at the very beginning. Maybe they do the obvious joke if it's that good and no one's done it, sure. But they're usually gonna dig deeper. And I agree with that so much. I agree with I think there's a couple of things that have been said that are huge. Like one is the constraint is the game. Like if you give kids like a ball and just say play a competitive game, nothing's going to happen until they create rules. And the second they create rules and they create a goal and stuff like that, now you have a game, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have a fleeting moment of entertainment and then boredom. And I think that goes for everything in life in general. I also think, Corey, you were touching on something that I love about Christopher's work, and I know this about Christopher, is Christopher's got a broad pool that he draws from, like of interests in music, in art beyond just comics, and in history and all sorts of stuff. And he's always kind of absorbing that information. But what's great is it shows in your work where it's when you're drawing, a scene, it doesn't always look like the same scene. Or thinking outside of the box, like you come up with interesting solutions that are outside of kind of the norm. And I think that does come from that. That's something I was literally talking about today, because I've been in a position where I have to teach like history classes the very last minute and have to create like 4 curriculums. And I can do it, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm able to do it. I've just acquired enough interest in history throughout my life where that's not a hard thing for me to do. Because I love history and I use history and art all the time. Sorry, what?
You also have the developed facility of teaching.
Yeah. But what I'm getting at is like, my point is, that's part of the art though, is like, I don't think I don't think I would be able to make books that I've made or anything like that without like broader interests other than just comics. And I love comics, but man, my comics would be so boring if all I was doing was reading comics. That's what I think what Corey mentioned that brought that up in my head was the drawing from the same pool.
Yeah.
And I like that you're not drawing from the same pool on your stuff. Like your jokes always, your pages 9 times out of 10 go a direction I completely didn't predict. Right. And it's real fun.
Well, there's a couple things I want to push into a little bit. We're using boredom a couple times in this conversation as if it's a negative. I think you can have boring results, right? Which I would maybe refer to as a different synonym for boredom, because boredom and creativity is actually really useful. They've done a number of studies that show that if you allow yourself to be bored, or what neurologists would call unprogrammed time, right? We have a lot of programmed time where other things are telling us how to think and feel and when to laugh and when to cry, and right. But if you have that unprogrammed time, that actually increases your creativity, your creative output afterwards. The other thing that I find super interesting is not committing to a solution is uncomfortable. And mentally uncomfortable, and boredom is uncomfortable. And it seems like for some amount of time, too much is also bad, but for some amount of time, sitting in the uncomfortableness of that boredom, and or sitting in the uncomfortableness of playing with the possibilities of solutions and not just committing to the first one, will often give you significantly more creative results, because the relief of committing to a solution, it is a release, and it is the relief from not knowing, or the relief of self-identifying as somebody who is decisive or whatever, right? And so if you can sit with that a little bit longer, then oftentimes you'll kind of get to that level. But I think it does take training, and that's one of the things that I find really interesting with this is, Christopher, is you've gotten to the point where if somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about would watch you do this, it seems like you commit to a solution really quickly because you're fast. But my guess is that you're actually running through a number of those more cliche, trite, and obvious things quicker, because you've kind of ingrained those neural pathways to drive by those. And so the commitment feels like it happens fast, but I still think you're passing the obvious to get there. It's kind of,
and I also love that you'll still play with the obvious, like a fish where it goes a direction that's not obvious, but you also are like, but I also need to make some really bad fish puns just because you have it's fun. But it's not bad. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? That's part of humor and comedy, is like kind of incorporating some of the obvious with the non, and in a very comedic way, you overdo it, which is what you should do in comedy. If you're going to go obvious, like if you're going to do a fish pun, do 10 fish puns. Or do the worst fish pun possible, you know?
Confuse a cat.
I love it. I think it's brilliant. Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of another interesting thing is if you abstract beyond the point of recognition, it's just meaningless. And so at some point, we all have to commit to something that is codified, something that is generally understood. There has to be shared experience and touch points, which some people might call obvious or cliche, but I think the creativity is in how those things are delivered.
Exactly.
And so,
well, some of the best graphic design is the obvious. Like right. There's some brilliant, actually a ton of brilliant graphic designs where it's like that was the designer who just got there first, and it was so obvious, and we all should have seen it. It's like a mathematical equation that's being discovered where you're like, why didn't we see that? So there's that too. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Get me thinking too much. It's in a good way. I also love what you were saying about boredom. I want to correct. I mean the
work,
game
the result
will produce something boring.
I know.
Whereas a creative, I do love that point because it ties back to the sport thing too, where a creative kid is gonna start creating a game with that ball. Whether you tell them the rules or not, they're gonna start inventing it. A person who hasn't nurtured their creativity will drop the ball and go look for another short-term solution, right? And Christopher is constantly creating his own game and letting other kids go, well, what are the rules of this? And they're like, okay.
And that's a really interesting thing as well. Adults are terrible at creativity, and one of the goals of being a creative as an adult is to try to become as childlike as possible, because and that's one of the things that's fun about your streams is you get on there and you're playing with other kids, and they're throwing, like, I have a class that I teach called intentional creativity, and I'm sitting down with 18 to 24-year-olds, and I'm like, one of my assignments is go find people under 6 or 7 years old and let them direct the play. Like, don't try to inflict order on them, or rules, or scorekeeping, or whatever. And you'll find that they don't really care about scorekeeping or who wins or who loses, and they're very collaborative, usually after the age of like 3.5. So if you can get a 3.5 to because like under 3 you get parallel play where the kids are playing next to each other, but between like 3 and 6 you get collaborative play where you get what Josh is talking about, and what you do, Christopher, where it's like It's like, well, what if you did this? What if you did this? And while you're making something, you're like, yep, that pig has an eye patch now. Yeah, he's gonna start. Like, and that is this idea. It's a very childlike way of doing things. And if you as an adult are one of those people that's like, people should never change their opinions. Flip floppers are bad or whatever. It's like, holy crap, man! Like, look at a kid. They are so curious, terrified, in awe, in love with the most simple things. Like I had a nephew who carried around a cutting board for like a year. It was just a nice wooden cutting board, and there was something about that cutting board. He called it his buddy. He cuddled it at night in bed. He loved that cutting board more than
excellent.
And
that's excellent.
And you just see.
To tie into what you're saying, I've really been holding this because when you guys saw me disappear, right? My son wanted a snack, right? And I go there and he hands me these things because we made magic wands and we got in wizard battles together. And I was just letting him direct the whole thing. So he's like, "Dad, you need to make a wand." I'm like, "Okay, does it need to be like an evil wand? Like, are we?" And he's like, "Yeah. Why don't mine's like green? So why don't you make yours red and black?" And I'm like, "All right, it's on." So we're walking around the house like casting spells. He's coming up with the spells, and we're in this world that's directed by him. And he's 10, but it's like he's got that ability to just and then what we're going to do is this, and then what we're going to do is this, and this is how the play works. And when I cast this spell, these are the rules. And it's amazing how quick and fluid that is. It's almost hard to keep up with. But it's funny, just to reiterate what Corey's saying. Yeah, get in a wizard battle with a kid, and you'll feel less precious about your stuff. Yeah.
And kids don't know that they should be ashamed yet, and that's one of those things that as adults we are so concerned about other people's perception of us that we will be in a total flow state, really enjoying something, and then we will notice that we are being observed, and it will completely reframe and recontextualize what we're doing to be an embarrassing thing that we should feel shame about. And true artists are going to be like, screw that, I'm going to keep doing this, you can watch. Or jump
Here's
in.
a pen. Jump in.
Yeah, right.
To tie that back to one of the questions asked of you, Christopher, about improv, so you've done improv, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
am
I wrong? Is that one of the rules where you can't you don't want to get a situation where you're shaming people for an improv choice?
So I didn't do on stage improv group thing. I went out for the Great Canadian Laugh Off, and and for all the competitors, there were 63 competitors in London and region, and I came in 5th. But I never wrote any bits. I just went up on stage and improv.
Yeah, that's great.
And I went up one time and I talked about the most viable live-in relationship I've had in my adult life. I wish I could share this with everyone else, the secrets of it, but we just celebrated, a 10-year anniversary. And basically the gist of it is that every time I come home, she's right there waiting for me. She looks up at me with those eyes, because I'm very tall. And she looks up at me with those eyes like, hey, you bring home some food, or you're going to shake some out of that box for me? And so I talked for 5 minutes about my cat. But I never talk about her as a cat. I talk about all the examples of what it is to live with a cat. And it's at the end of the bit that, I finally said, basically, if you want a really successful live-in adult relationship, get a cat. Yeah. And that's it, I'm done. And I walk off the stage. And there's a girl in the front row who had been talking through everybody else's sets, who had managed to be quiet through this whole thing, because you could see her going, it's what a cat does. Like, you could just tell that she's trying to process this.
Right.
And at the end, she goes, I knew it was a cat. Like, carries on, falls out of her chair. There we go. Now there's a reason to have her. Come on, you got to go. You're too drunk. But so I would improv whole bits about, meeting my oldest, her boyfriend, meeting him for the first time. And, I didn't want to make it weird because, I'm a big guy, I'm scary, but I wanted to engage with this young man and talk to him and be able to suss him out because he's going on a date with my daughter. And, so I put my hand out to shake it. And as soon as he went to receive that and shake it back, I pulled him in close, and I held him nice and tight and smelled him a little bit, and it just, again, it just goes on for the 5-minute time allotment. And I just said, try to be open and receptive to the young people today. Just don't make it awkward, But that was it. And I would improv whatever. I never had a safety net. I just went up and started rambling. But I have an affinity for rambling. Surprise. And that's where Scott lives.
You fit well with the show. That's all we do.
Yeah. But when it comes to the creativity part, I really appreciate what you guys are saying about my process. And I feel like you guys, it's hitting the nail on the head, because it really is just receptiveness, I guess. And trying to, I wrote something in, my wife helped me write something in a press release. I came to realize I enjoy exploring any genre, and there's something for everyone that I'm trying to put in the stories I create, right? I haven't come across anybody else that I know that sort of works the way I do, but because I try to showcase the different styles or the story approaches and the varied mediums and all the different things in which I engage, and it's hard to fit that into a certain mold, because it just, I try to leave it unfettered. I try to make it so. What did I do last page? I don't want to do that. I got to do something different. And I think that allows growth. Every page, every piece is growth.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it and to wrap things up, because it kind of brings everything full circle when you're talking about a page, the single page. And so is there, but before we start closing out, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to mention real quick, other than, everyone will get a chance to talk about what they're working on and what they have to promote, but I'm doing this on YouTube 2:00 every afternoon, Monday through Friday. Weekends, I can't guarantee when I'm available on weekends. I've got to have a break at some point. That doesn't mean I'm not doing pages. It's just I'm not doing them live. So I do that on my YouTube, and then the book is available on Amazon. And there is that link. I did put that link in the description, so you can click on that link.
The only other thing I do that's different is on Patreon, and I appreciate, Corey's one of my patrons, and I appreciate all the support. I try to put additional stuff on Patreon that people don't normally see from me.
That sketchbook would be a good thing to show on your Patreon.
Oh, yeah?
Look through there, yeah.
Honestly, Christopher, you really should consider, like, maybe a follow-up book that's just a reproduction of your sketchbook, like Acme Novelty date book style, Yeah.
I have 5 sketchbooks going right now, and they all look like that.
Yeah,
and the fun part of it is
collect the best of them in one volume, and you'll at least have 3 buyers, I'm guessing, on the show.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I can't even keep one sketchbook, and he's got 5 going at the same time.
Different sizes, different kinds of paper, but they're white, like they're blank from whatever the last. Like, I just fill the holy baloney out of every page, and just keep moving slowly through every book like that. But the majority of those books are always blank, and people are like, you could spread this out across all these pages, right? If I was more rational. But yeah, so thanks very much, guys, for all the support. So yeah, the book's on Amazon now, and if people want to leave reviews and stuff like that, that's great. I found out that Amazon is nicer to you if people respond.
Oh, really?
Like with ratings or reviews. I'm learning little things every day about this whole process, and I know you guys have all been through it before, but yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun. But thanks very much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate that. And,
of course.
Yeah, and I really respect what each of you do, and so it's nice to be able to chat with you guys about this, and I like that we all think on the same depth.
Well, and to encourage you guys, I was under the impression that it was going to be quite a bit more expensive than it is. For a hardcover graphic novel, it's really good price, so you guys can order it. I ordered mine today. It's going to show up on the 8th. That's how quick it goes with Amazon. So if you guys order it within a week, you can be reading Christopher's book and supporting indie comics. And what better than also supporting our friends in Canada, which should be doing.
Yeah, and go check out the YouTube channel because you could be a small part of Christopher's next book if you're contributing.
100%, yeah.
It still stands on any of my social media posts, Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, or YouTube even. If you put down a suggestion, I will write it in the book, and it will happen at some point.
He's not kidding. I made a joke, an off bit on a stream about a guy without thumbs, and it was like a 2 a.m. joke, made it with our chats and stuff, and I was like, Christopher has to do this. And the next week, he's doing the guy with no thumbs going, guess who, like in a world with no thumbs, going, guess who has 2 thumbs. And I was like, he did it. He made it. He made the thing. You guys take him very seriously. He will do this. Yeah.
I don't know if I can get this to show without flaring out. See all the...
Yeah.
Let's increase that.
I write them all down.
Love
and the yellow is pending and the check marks are done.
Yeah.
So, Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'll be joining Mr. Paul Payton Saturday morning.
Oh, cool.
On
awesome.
Saturday morning cartoons. So,
Paul, who also has a book coming up. So.
Oh, yeah. We were talking about today.
Yeah,
really
we'll be
excited
getting
about
Paul on at some point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so definitely click on Christopher's the link to Christopher's book in the description of the video. Check it out. I'm going to be doing that. So yeah, thank you, Christopher. And then Josh, what do you got to close us out with as far as promoting? What do you got?
Oh yeah, make sure you get Jacob's Apartment and 2 stories, but after you've ordered Christopher's book, because I really think we gotta get behind this book. And then also, if you haven't yet, also subscribe to my channel, Joshua Kemble, where I will do weird things like go through my guitar collection or work on graphic novel edit, or occasionally just talk about weird philosophy stuff and fun other things like such. Yeah. And by the way, Corey's gonna mention his book, and I am stunned at how entertaining, informed, just and unique and great this story is. So you guys listen to what Corey says, because you guys need to read it. It's really good, and you don't even have to read it; he'll read it for you. So anyway,
that's my favorite kind of book, where somebody else reads it to me. So, all right, Corey. With that being said, let everyone know about your project and any other projects you got going on.
Yeah. So, Scenes from a Non-Existent Book is a playlist that you can find on my YouTube channel, and I don't know what this means yet, but I marked it as a podcast, so I don't know what YouTube does with that, but anyway, we'll find out. But anyway, I don't know, there's 4 or 5 chapters out. I read them to you. They are about 5 to, I think, 12 minutes long each, and it's just what I think might happen if time slowly started to break down, or if our perception of the present started to become unmoored from the present moment. And it's Scott described it really well, I think. So far, it's kind of like that's the basic premise, and then there's a bunch of short stories that are little vignettes that are happening within that kind of premise. There is a thread where they're all kind of heading.
Yeah, I liked when you said kind of, like a World War Z, the book.
Yeah, so if you've read World War Z, if not watching Brad Pitt just be attractive and run around the world, but actually read the book, it's a little bit of that, and last show Josh mentioned that it's a little bit of Terry Pratchett. I actually intentionally reread 3 or 4 Terry Pratchett books as I was writing this to get a little bit of his like play on words and stuff on there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's got a little of the snark too, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not demeaning snark. Just for anybody who's watching, it's like it's authentic, like sophisticated. That's what reminds me of Pratchett about it. Is that there's a tone that's similar.
Yeah.
Are you reading Philip K. as you're writing this?
Yep. Yeah. So right now I'm in the middle of 4 books. So I'm reading short stories by Philip K. Dick. I'm reading the Guard series by Terry Pratchett. I'm reading the 3rd book in the Rook series. And I mean, technically this isn't books, but I'm reading different philosophers, scientists, and neurologists' thoughts on how we perceive time and what that does to our brain. So there is a prefrontal cortex involvement in different types of processes that we're going to, depending on whether it's sort of like an emotional or a spiritual or a romantic kind of or a fearful moment that we're experiencing at the time. Those fire in different parts of your brain. That will become relevant soon.
Max Brooks, Mel Brooks' son, who wrote World War Z. I'm sorry, World War Z.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He also wrote Zombie Survival Guide as a graphic novel, and he wrote a series of Confirmed Reports, which is a graphic novel that ties into the World War Z universe.
Yeah, and if you follow me on Substack, you can get all of this, which I was reminded of because the guy who wrote Fight Club, Chuck Palahniuk, was using Max Brooks as an example in one of his recent posts on that. And he was actually had a conversation with him, and he was saying that Max was saying that he actually wrote World War Z because of a cancer diagnosis and watching a loved one of his kind of go through this thing. And the way that he wrote World War Z was based on just this horrible thing happens and you go to the doctor and there's just a little bit of new terrible information that you get each time you go and you never quite know what's going on and there's no narrative. And so he's like, I'm going to write a book where you just get a little bit more terrible information each chapter and you don't really know what's going on and there's no narrative. And there is a narrative, but not in the traditional sense where you follow a character through the thing.
It's kind of like Mitch Albom's Tuesdays with Maury, but without a through line.
Yeah,
love it.
So, anyway, so yeah, we're gonna revisit the 5th generational ship that has been traveling for over 200 years that launched from Earth 6 months ago pretty soon as well. So, if you don't know what that means, go read those. They're free, or listen to them. I'll read them to you. Either one of those. Get on my Substack.
And as far as me, I have a website, circworks.com. I've got a bunch of stuff up there, and from everything from comics to prints to wax packs, all kinds of crazy stuff. I also have, you're here on my YouTube channel, so check out some of the videos there. And remember, this weekend, Saturday, I will be at Surprise Comics in Surprise, Arizona. I'll be doing sketches, I'll be signing comics, and I'll bring along a few Star Wars things I'm working on that I will also be previewing on a live stream tomorrow. I'll be actually making some of that stuff, so definitely keep your eye out for that and check it out. So that's all we got.
If you guys are in Arizona, you can have Scott Sterling draw you some Star Wars stuff. What
it doesn't
what
have
better
to be Star
pitch?
Wars, yeah. And the other thing is,
get out there.
Yeah, that's really the only time I do commissions is when I'm doing an in-store signing or something. So that's one opportunity you'll get if you want a piece of artwork that you
make
can
it happen.
Much like Christopher, explain what you want, but not like Christopher in that I'm not going to go crazy and it's not. And hopefully you won't give me any crazy prompts like you guys give Christopher. So
I want this job in the hut.
Also, Scott, tell people about your. I'm sorry, I'm jumping in, but your Comic Maker's Toolbox.
Oh yeah. So I've got a number of digital products that'll help you do comics faster, better, more efficiently. And one of them is the Comic Maker Toolkit. I've got a free version called the Comic Maker Starter Kit. If you get that, you can kind of get a taste of what the bigger toolkit's like. But you also get on my newsletter, and you get more templates and free stuff every single month as I released a new video. But tons of things. I got the comic lettering masterclass I've got, which is another these are all cool digital products to help you. I've got the amazing comic book World Builder, which is like my biggest digital product, which has everything you need from pre-designed backgrounds and perspective grids and all kinds of stuff. So you can check all that stuff out at circworks.com. So, and then this show, the Artcasters, we do this show every single week. It rotates between my channel and Corey's channel and Josh's channel. We have a different guest every week. Usually it's the same time, but it could be different. But the best thing to do if you want to know when we're going to go live is just join our mailing list. There's a link in the description of this video. Sign up for that, and we don't spam or anything. All we do is usually be about at least 30 minutes before we go live. We'll send out a newsletter and let you with the link so you'll know exactly whose channel it's going to be on that week, who the guest is, all that stuff. So you can join that by clicking the link. And I wanted to thank, again, there's a lot of stuff in the chat. But thank you everyone in the chat. And yeah, we'll be back again next week. Or if you hang around tomorrow, I'll be doing, like I said, I'll be doing a separate live stream here on my channel. So we'll see all you guys. We'll see all you guys either. I'll see you tomorrow or see you next week on the Artcasters. Later.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
May the 4th be with you.